Now, obviously we have a presidential election coming up on the 26th, but attached to that also is a referendum on Article 40.6.1, the blasphemy laws in Ireland. Can you tell us a little bit about it and who you are and what you guys represent?
Basically, I'm Michael Farrar. I'm a volunteer with Atheist Ireland. We are campaigning to remove the offence of blasphemy from the Constitution, as well as several other secular issues, such as separation of church and state. Blasphemy is defined as any utterance that is offensive to religious individuals or to religious doctrine. It's having an effect on freedom of expression in Ireland. For example, the programme The Savage Eye has had several sketches pulled because RTE does not want to get involved in a blasphemy lawsuit where they could be fined up to €25,000. It's also having a chilling effect and a very damaging effect on freedom of religion internationally. For example, Pakistan, who executes people for blasphemy, uses the Irish legislation to justify their own, because we are the only modern Western nation to have introduced a blasphemy offence this century. This is obviously not very good if you're a minority Christian in Pakistan.
No, indeed.
Because the UN does have individuals involved in trying to protect religious freedom. And every time they criticise Pakistan for implementing the death penalty for blasphemy, Pakistani officials simply quote the Irish legislation back to them. So it's having a real material effect on the ability to protect religious minorities, particularly Christian minorities.
Indeed, absolutely, yeah. Now obviously, the Irish laws on blasphemy were actually based on UK laws, which were ultimately done away with in 2008.
Yep.
The same blasphemy laws. So why are we still using it?
Because there was a court case in '87 that made things complicated. There were several constitutional reviews that recommended its removal. Dermot Ahern decided to deal with it in 2009, but at the time the country was kind of in dire straits. So he just took the cheaper option of trying to rework it in an unworkable manner that it could never be used. It's essentially a law designed not to be used, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but...
Indeed, yeah. I mean, when you consider it was only, was it a couple of years ago when Stephen Fry was...
Yes.
Was brought to task over it?
Yes, and the guards actually could not find anyone who was offended.
Even the guy that made the complaint said he wasn't offended by it, but he felt he had a duty as a citizen to report it.
Yes, because it is the law of the land.
Yeah.
And Stephen Fry found it rather hilarious.
He did.
But several other countries, for example, New Zealand at the time, realised, thanks to the controversy, that they also had it on their books and quickly moved to remove it from their books because it really does not belong in this century.
No, indeed not. It is somewhat of an embarrassment.
I would say so, even though a lot of people wouldn't even be aware of it. And for dealings with other advanced countries, it's not really a problem. However, when you're dealing with other countries such as Pakistan, it really does become a very serious problem.
Indeed, when other countries are using and quoting our archaic laws here in order to execute people, well, that's fairly bad, that is, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's a real embarrassment. And this is not just a secular issue. You can be a deeply religious person and still care about getting this law removed. Because if you say, for example, you are a Christian, surely you'd want to do whatever you can to make sure that Christians in other lands have a safer time of it.
Yeah.
Removing this law can do exactly that.
Now, the actual law itself it says the publication of or utterance of blasphemous, seditious, or indecent matter is an offence which shall be punishable in accordance with the law. And as you said, that law is a fine of 25 grand. Now, is it just the removal of the word blasphemous, or is it all the paraphernalia goes behind that word? Blasphemy? You know, are they removing the intent, removing the offence altogether, or is it just the word blasphemous?
As far as I understand, it is removing the constitutional provision for the offence.
Right, so it's the all the mechanisation that goes behind it as well.
Yeah, it's quite unusual that a law would actually be embedded in the Constitution. Usually a Constitution is a framing that laws are built upon. But this is actually hardwired into the Constitution, which is why we require a referendum to remove it. Almost all other laws do not require a referendum to be amended or removed, but this one was put in at the founding of the state, when we were basically just copied and pasted most of our laws, most of our constitutional laws in the UK.
Now, even the Irish Council of Churches said this was largely obsolete as well. So, I mean,
yes, and if you were to ask church representatives in places where Christianity is a minority faith, they would be very much in favour of it being actively removed. However, for a modern, plural, inclusive, secular society, this is indeed an absolutely obsolete law.
Indeed, and a secular society is what we need to move towards in this country in totality, really, because, you know, we are not secular yet.
We are moving nicely along the way towards it. We still have some hold-ups, for example, in education, and in some of our hospitals there's some holdouts, but with time, hopefully, we will continue moving in the right direction and continue making progress to ensure that your religious identity does not inflict how you can live your life in this country.
Indeed, absolutely. And now, a few years ago, yourselves, Atheist Ireland and the Humanist Association of Ireland and the Council of Civil Liberties, there was a meeting or a plenary session that took place with various people in support of keeping it, and you guys obviously in favour of removing it. What were the arguments, or what are the arguments for retention of this article?
Well, many people would put forward the argument that religious feeling needs to be protected.
But offence is a human emotion rather than anything like physical.
Yes, and it's a bit of a strange one. You'd think that people who are very secure in their faith would be the last people who would need their feelings protected. Everyone should be able to take fair criticism, and this law prevents fair criticism and critiquing of ideas.
Indeed, yeah.
As people might might have their feelings by it.
Right. So, if you were to say to our listeners now,
very comfortable with their faith.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. If you were to say to our listeners now, vote yes, what reasons would you give for voting yes?
I would say vote yes to ensure religious freedom, to ensure protection of minorities overseas, to protect freedom of expression, to ensure liberty, and to ensure a robust debate.
Indeed, and to show people that Ireland is a modern country, or moving towards being a more modern country anyway.
That's certainly one of the benefits of it.
Indeed. Now, if the motion was carried, would you see an appeal by the church?
I don't believe so. The church is not really interested in fighting this because it does harm Christians overseas. So, whilst I'm sure they would love to possibly go back to a time where religion was held in much more sans regard than it is today, they recognise that we do live in a plural society, and whilst Christianity may be a comfortable majority here, there is persecuted Christian minorities overseas that need protection, and the best way to protect those Christian minorities is to promote secular values.
Absolutely, that's what I wanted to hear. Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And if people want to get in touch with you guys, Atheist Ireland, how can they do that?
We have a website called atheist.ie. We also have a Facebook page, Atheist Ireland. If you want additional information about this referendum, please check out please check out blasphemy.ie, and you'll find a lot of information specifically related to this referendum on that page.
Fantastic. Michael, I appreciate your time today, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.